Ready to go.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. And we're going to spend a little bit of time today talking about how to navigate elder care. So I'm going to throw the slide up. And can everybody see a presentation that basically says a blue screen that says navigating elder care?
No. There we go.
All right. So we're going to walk through several things that are important to most families when we're dealing with a loved one who's aging. Maybe they need care services at home or professional services in a boarding care or assisted living or something of that nature. I've been working with Helen Justice now for about 12 years. I was working at a law firm 12 years ago when Helen arrived and shared this concept she had of helping families navigate this whole giant mess of Medicare, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, VA. And when she started explaining what she was trying to do to help families be more successful at this process, we laughed. We thought that no one would ever try to tackle something as complicated as this. But as we watched Helen stand up her company and build her team, it became obvious she was onto something. And I can attest that for the last 12 years, every application that I have seen Helen and her team turn in for Medi-Cal or VA has been approved. And that is unheard of. When we look at our veteran service officers serving nearly 1.9 million veterans in the state of California alone, we have about 63 veteran service officers, and their approval success ratio on their claims is about 23 to 24%. When we look at families, when they try to do these VA claims by themselves, it's typically well less than 1%. The Medi-Cal applications, it's complicated as well. It can be anywhere from 30 to 50 pages. So the process is difficult, but what we're going to do today is explain why the process is designed the way it is and what you have to do in order to secure the VA benefits if you're a veteran or a widow, or the Medi-Cal benefits if you're going into skilled care. We're going to help you understand the things that are right to do and understand the things you need to avoid so that you don't start making mistakes that can be very costly to you in the end. Now, my name is Ed Cotney, and I run a tax planning business for people who sell their businesses, apartment complexes, and things of that nature. I'm a tax guy. I do this pro bono with Helen. I enjoy doing this with Helen. For 12 years now, we have helped thousands of families navigate through this process. On the VA side, we see nearly $1 million a year of VA benefits coming to Helen's clients. So it is a big deal. It does mean a lot to a lot of people, and that's the satisfaction that I get from this. I am an author of a book called Tax Secrets Made Simple, and like Helen, I'm retired military as well. Helen is one of the few certified geriatric care managers that is also a VA accredited claims agent in the United States. In fact, we only know of 2 others besides her, 3 in the entire nation. Here in the state of California, as a VA claims agent, she is one of less than 30 that has that accreditation to be able to process and prosecute claims for veterans benefits. In fact, Helen, with her credentials, is actually allowed to represent families in court, not as an attorney, but to represent them in court for their complaints with the VA, but she's not allowed to represent people at the U.S. Supreme Court or the U.S. Court of Military Appeals. I've known Helen for many years. I've watched her help countless families. Helen's retired military herself. So Helen Justice, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Ed. And I got to give kudos to Ed. We've been speaking together for 12 years. I'm known as his work wife, and his regular wife knows that we've been together all this time. He flew the planes and I flew the desks. So who had the important job in the military. But I have been now retired more than I was in the military. But I have. When I got out of the military, little did I know I would end up in the senior industry. But I'm here. I've seen so many families devastated because they didn't know or didn't have a place to go to get information. So how I got in here, this is going to be my grandfather. And my grandfather came over from Greece when he was 12 years old. At that time, they were killing the men and boys during World War II there. And so he came to the United States here, no education. He never did go to school, but he ended up in the railroad industry and retired out of there. So my grandfather, worked very hard. And when he was getting older, his care plan was his daughter, my aunt, was going to be taking care of him. So in December of 86, 85, my grandmother passed away. So my grandfather moved in with his daughter. I'm telling you, folks, it didn't even last 30 days. Did not even last 30 days. My aunt was a little bit OCD. Literally, you could eat off her garage floor. And he was allowed no shoes. He could go to his bedroom, the kitchen, and that was it. So he went out the front door there. And of course, my aunt decided that she needed to call the police and did a 5150. Everybody knows what a 5150 is? Yeah, crazy guy. So thank goodness his doctor intervened. So I was back here at McClellan Air Force Base as squadron commander, and I get a call from his doctor. And his doctor says he wants you to come pick him up. What am I going to do with Grandpa? I have no idea. I take care of airmen's families. I do not know what the first step is for senior care. So also the social worker up there says your aunt's trying to put him on Medicaid. And we're going to learn a little bit about that today. Here in California, it's Medi-Cal, but the other 49 states, it's Medicaid. And when you're applying for Medicaid, you don't have any money. So young in my career in the military, how was I going to pay for this? And I bet you're wondering the same thing. Or you have clients that are wondering how they're going to pay for it. So by the way, he's in Portland, Oregon. So I had to fly up there, bring him down here, and I had no idea where to go, what to do. My resources was the Yellow Pages. You remember those? Some of you might remember the Yellow Pages. So I knew that I was not going to make the same mistake my aunt made, and I went and got him an independent living over in Carmichael. I had to furnish it because he didn't come with furniture. He was mad as a wet hen and wanted an attorney. I had to find him a doctor to get medications and everything, and I had no idea how I was going to pay it. And he kept saying that he had money. Well, the social worker says Medicaid. So ended up that we found out Grandpa did have money to the tune of $150,000. My aunt already embezzled $60,000 before my grandmother died. So what she was trying to do is a 5150 to make him crazy so she can get the rest of his money. So we ended up in an independent living. I had to get back to work. I lined up his medications morning, noon, and night in those little trays. He has meals. He's got, somebody coming in, cleaning his room. And just a couple days into it, I get a call from the community saying they just sent him to the emergency room as he took all those medications at once. So now it meant that he needed to be on the assisted side so somebody could manage his medication. And y'all know what that means is more money. So if you are here today wondering how you're going to pay for it, there might be some benefits out here that could help defray that cost a little bit. So everybody on this has a sunset plan. We call that a plan A. To live and die in your home, you want to die in that bed of yours. But 73% of you on this call today will not be successful at this program.
So since the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta says 73% of us will not get to die in our own bed or at our house, that means we're going to die in some form of managed care. the hospital, care home, something of that nature. We're going to walk through some of the Medicare benefits real quick. So let's pretend Mr. Warren Buffett falls, breaks a hip. Mr. Buffett, one of the wealthiest people on the planet. Ambulance, emergency room, surgery, intensive care maybe, and then rehabilitation. And Mr. Buffett, being over the age of 65, he's eligible for Social Security. So when you looked at this fact pattern here of the fall and the medical treatments, who pays for this? Overwhelmingly, Medicare is going to pick up this bill. So if you're over 65 and you're eligible for Social Security, the first thing you need to know about your loved one is chances are Social Security is a good thing. So if you're taking notes, write down Medicare is our friend. It takes care of people. It doesn't matter what your income is. It doesn't matter what your net worth is. Medicare is our friend. But Medicare is a Band-Aid. The whole purpose of Medicare is to get you better so you can go home. Now let's drill this down a little bit and start talking about things you need to know. When you get to the emergency room, one of the first things they're going to ask you to do is sign a piece of paper for financial responsibility. Don't worry, they're not going to explain anything. Your loved one's here, somebody needs to sign. But knowing that your loved one's over 65 and eligible for Social Security, you should be able to take a deep breath going, Social Security, Medicare is our friend. Things where it may not be your friend. We get to the emergency room and somebody says, there's been an event, but we're not going to admit your loved one. We're going to observe them. So if you're taking notes, write down the word observed is a bad word, because now the question becomes, is Medicare obligated to pay? Oh, you don't know. Maybe, maybe not. The good word is admitted. So if mom and dad are admitted, Medicare is on the hook. They have to help. Now, there is an exception here. Not everybody is eligible for Social Security, such as union workers. So if your loved one's a union worker, you need to be asking what is covered in the event of a situation like this. But we're going to stay with Medicare and Social Security because the bulk of the nation is that. So we had the event. We get to the hospital. We rode in the ambulance. Emergency services are provided. Somebody says we need surgery. Again, Medicare is our friend. We end up staying in the hospital and they say you need to go into rehab. Here's another term you need to know. If you want Medicare to be on the hook to pay for rehab, you have to have 3 midnights admitted. 3 midnights admitted. So write down 3 midnights. So if we're on day number 2 and they're saying rehab and you get discharged into a rehab facility, is Medicare obligated to pay? No. Got to have 3 midnights. 3 midnights in the hospital admitted. The doctor writes that order for rehab. We go to the rehab center, which is oftentimes at a skilled nursing facility. Medicare is our friend. We love Medicare. I made the comment earlier, Medicare is a get better, go home strategy. So now that we're at the rehab center with 3 midnights, a doctor's order covered under Medicare, Helen, does Medicare allow us to stay at the rehab center forever?
No, each year you get 100 days, but they don't allow you to use all 100 days at once, because here we are in January and you use up all 100 days, that'll take you through March or around that time. But let's say June or July, you have another medical event. Who's going to pay for the surgery? Who's going to pay for rehab? That's why they will not allow you to do all 100 days at once. So normally it's about 14 to 20 days, and then there's to be able to discharge from there. And depending on where you're going, can you go home? Maybe you can't go home. Maybe you're going into assisted living. So that's where we come in and help with that placement and make those decisions, or help you have choices to make decisions.
All right, so 100 days per year. So then the question becomes, and Helen kind of gave this away a little bit, each HMO will allow you to claim 100% Medicare benefits for 14 to 21 days. So again, it's up to your HMO. Most are 21, but a few are 14. So we get 100% Medicare coverage under rehab. After we had 3 midnights, doctor's order, Medicare covers 100%. However, Helen said you get 100 days. So once you pass that threshold of 14 to 21 days, contingent upon your HMO, Medicare is on the hook for 80% for the remainder days. 100 days per year, the first 14 to 21 are 100%. After that, Medicare pays for 80%. So one of the homework questions you might want to look into is what happens after day number 21. Does mom and dad have any type of supplemental insurance policy that could cover that shortfall? So Medicare is our friend. Medicare covers the first 14 to 21 days, then 80% for the remaining number of days. And then after 100 days, if we're still in rehab, Medicare is done. So then the question becomes, if we had a long-term rehab event, who pays on day number 101? When you can get just this fact pattern under control, it helps you realize whether you have great pieces of the plan are good and maybe some issues that you need to look at on how to improve the plan or solve the problem. The goal that Helen and her team has is to make it so that you can take all of these issues, put them to bed, know that you have the answers to these problems so that everybody can sleep at night and take a deep breath. Okay, that's the whole goal here, is to equip you with knowledge so that there's no, oh, we didn't know that. So most fact patterns, when we end up in some form of professional care, normally begins like this: an event, sometimes some surgery, sometimes rehab, and then into some type of either short-term or long-term scenario. So for the short term, Medicare is our friend. Everybody's good with Medicare. Give me a nod if we're all like, oh yeah, we like Medicare. Medicare is our friend. And now we start going, what if we're going to go past 100 days? Or what if we need more advanced care? What if we need long-term residential care? That type of thing. So some of the things we've learned over the many years of helping families navigate this process, particularly with a married couple, we'll typically find dad is the one who is the ill spouse. Mom is the one is the well spouse. And as the well spouse, she's the full-time caregiver. She works 41 hours a day, 9 days a week as the caregiver. Dad's 235 pounds. Mom's 110 pounds soaking wet. And mom's the caregiver when dad's on the floor, got to pick him up. The family, what we typically see is they tend to focus on the ill spouse. It's what are we going to do about the ill spouse? And we totally forget about the well spouse. When it comes to statistics, we typically find the well spouse ends up in the hospital first. We also typically find the well spouse passes away first. So what we're trying to say here, for a married couple, you've got to plan for both the ill spouse and the well spouse. What are we going to do if the well spouse is in the hospital long-term and dad's at home alone? What's the plan? Dad coming home with you, you moving in with dad. Maybe you've got a boarding care home set up to take care of dad immediately. The point is, you got to have control. You've got to have your options figured out on what's the most economic, smart thing to do. And this ties right into both VA and Medi-Cal benefits that we may or may not need. So we always want to focus on both spouses. Does that make sense? Just give me a nod.
So how are you going to pay for this event? You know, Medicare is limited. You know, your health insurance also limited. It does not pay for long-term care. So there is the VA program for wartime veterans and widows of wartime veterans, but you have to jump through some hoops and be able to show that you need the VA aid and attendance. But once you exhaust the parents' resources, then what are you going to do? Are you and your family going to be able to pony up the money and supplement mom and dad? Or how's this going to work for you? And Medi-Cal is limited and it's for skilled nursing only. A lot of people say, well, we'll just, you know, check mom or dad into skilled nursing. Well, one of the things that you will not be checking them in with is dementia. If they have dementia, you will not be checking them in as their primary diagnosis, will not be checking them in at the skilled nursing. So you really need to have a plan put together. So will the children be able to pay for it, along with helping them out, supplement there? So what's your plan? We're looking for plan B, C, and D. So you already got in the mail, you got a handout, just like the one that's on the screen. And there's total of 3 pages. So we're going to be going over this comparison chart right now. And then as we go through, we'll be able to give you the veterans qualification and also the Medi-Cal qualifications.
All right. So you got this slide in your hand, and get your pencil out if you want to start circling and drawing arrows. But what I'm trying to do in this analysis in a matter of minutes, instead of camping out here for 2 or 3 hours, which I would love to do, what is the difference between Medicare, Medi-Cal, and VA aid and attendance? First off, we've already touched on Medicare to an extent. It's a program for those over the age of 65 paid into Social Security. Mr. Buffett got care services, didn't have any income test or asset test. We talked about admitted versus observed. We talked about the rehab process. We talked about the 3 midnights. We talked about the first 14 days being at 100%, the next set of days at 80%. But Helen, there's that word plateau in the bottom left-hand corner of column 1, plateau. What is plateau? What is that about?
So that means that the individual is no longer getting better every day. According to Medicare, they have to hit these milestones. And either the physical therapist or the nutritionist or even the occupational therapist, if they don't see you improving every day and hitting those milestones, then you plateau. You got about 24 to 48 hours to get them out of the skilled nursing facility. Otherwise, you revert to private pay for over $800 a day.
So the word plateau, I would circle that and put the word bad next to it. Because when you get that phone call from the rehab center saying, we're going to have a family meeting tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock, and they start using terms like plateau, that means we either need to have a big checkbook or we need to have the ability to move mom or dad quickly into something like a boarding care facility or something of that nature, so we don't have that huge, enormous daily bill. And notice at the bottom in green, it says no recovery. So when Mr. Warren Buffett had his event, went to the hospital, had the midnights, had the surgery, had rehab, the chances are they took Mr. Buffett to a hospital that he owns anyway, but the reality is Medicare paid. And because he received his Medicare benefits, just like us, there's no bill. Even when he dies, there's no bill. Now notice to the column to the right where it's got Medi-Cal at the bottom, the word recovery in red. So if I use a Medi-Cal benefit, such as any skilled nursing home, Medi-Cal may have the right to recover against my estate when I die to get their money back. And we're going to talk about that a little bit today. But as we start at the top of the Medi-Cal column, there's an income test. Now remember, Medi-Cal is the scenario where we had the event, we got to the hospital, we went into rehab, we plateaued or we graduated out of our entire 100 days, and we have a prognosis from the physician that the patient needs to stay in skilled nursing for a long period of time. And then people go, okay, skilled nursing is going to be $10,000 a month on average around the Sacramento area. Okay, if it's $10,000 a month, how are we going to pay for Medi-Cal? So there's these tests that you have to basically accomplish when you're trying to do things. So for a married couple, they want to see if you got income greater than $3,200 and change a month. They want to see if you have liquid assets more than about $128,000. Helen kind of touched on Medi-Cal. When you go into skilled nursing, is for medical reasons as a primary diagnosis. Remember, dementia is not a medical diagnosis. So going into skilled nursing, you've got to have a medical reason: heart problems, lung problems, feeding tubes, medical. A term that's misunderstood all the time is called spin down. And this is a term that is easily controlled when you're proactive. So one of the things Helen and her team will do is to help you avoid from wrongfully spending down your assets. We've had people get Medi-Cal benefits with $6 million. and we'll get about half a dozen families a year where they'll come in needing help. They're multimillionaires, and we want to qualify for Medi-Cal. Well, you got to understand the very first thing we typically put on the table for the multimillionaires is it may be cheaper just to go buy the care home. Okay? But there is a break-even point where you've got to start having intelligent conversations. There's a lot of rules about look back, things that mom and dad did with their assets prior to applying for Medi-Cal. We're going to show you in 3 case studies on how we apply these rules so you can go, oh, that one's us. There's a married rate and a single rate. IRAs to a certain point are acceptable. But again, that red word in recovery at the bottom, if we don't do things right, we may not qualify for Medi-Cal, causing us to spend down the estate. And then we may end up qualifying for Medi-Cal and end up losing the estate in a recovery. We want you to avoid that. The most important thing you need to know about Medi-Cal is it's for skilled nursing only. And whether you're a veteran or not, regardless of your age, always preserve and protect your Medi-Cal eligibility. So this is not just about mom and dad. This is also about you, making certain that you don't do things to cause your eligibility for Medi-Cal to be ever in question. Now let's look at the VA aid and attendance to the far right-hand side. Again, 65 years old, unemployable. The person had 90 days active duty in the military. There was a war going on somewhere. They did not have to be in the war. They just had to be on the planet when there was war going on and active duty. And Helen, what's that term ADLs? What's that about?
So activities of daily living. I bet you Dan on this call here knows what activities of daily living are. So in order to get your VA benefit, you need at least 2 of the 5 activities of daily living: bathing, dressing, hygiene, transferring, and ambulation. I need at least 2 of those. Now, some of your long-term care insurance, they may need between 3 and 5 before you can, get the long-term care kicked in. But for VA purposes, you need a third-party individual, like a boarding care, assisted living, that is helping them with those activities of daily living.
All right. So once again, this aid and attendance program from the VA is medically driven. Okay. There's got to be medical reasons and medical expenses to even apply for this program. I do want to point out that the VA has 9 different programs. This is just one of them, the aid and attendance program, which for seniors is the most sought after. Now, there's a complicated way to explain how the VA does their income test. That one will only take us 2 hours to explain, or I can give you the 30-second version. Almost every time people go, we want the 30-second version, not the 2-hour complicated breakout the calculator and spreadsheet version. It's this simple. The VA wants to see that the applicant for aid and attendance is spending more on their cost of care than they have coming in. So for example, if dad has $3,000 a month as a single person applying for aid and attendance, the VA wants to see that he is spending at least 5% more on his care cost than he has coming in. So if he has $3,000 coming in, his care cost needs to be $3,150 in order to qualify for the full amount. Here's where you get in trouble all the time. You jump on the internet, you pull down the forms, you throw in some numbers, you send the form into the VA, and the next thing you know, you get a nice little denial letter saying, 1, you don't have any care expenses, or 2, you don't have enough care expenses, and the most common one is your form's incomplete. So there is an income test for the aid and attendance program, somewhat like the Medi-Cal test. Notice there's an asset test here of $130,000. Look at the VA one, it's $128,000, kind of close. So anyway, the VA has an asset test. So if mom and dad have $400,000 of cash in the bank, they're going to get a denial. Again, we have a spend down rule, a look back rule. IRAs are sometimes a problem. And then there's 3 different pay rates for aid and attendance. So when Helen showed up at the law firm 12 years ago, explaining that she wanted to help families navigate this disaster right here, this is why we laughed. This is difficult for even anyone to understand, particularly when you're having to do it in a hurry because you have a loved one that needs some type of financial assistance, okay? All right, so Helen, we're going to jump into the first case, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, the first case. Now, I want to remind you that you have a handout. And so as we're going through these, we'll be going over these qualifications. There's a front, top and the bottom. The top is for the veterans qualification. The bottom is for Medi-Cal. So we'll be going over that. And then you have the lab. So this is one of our clients, Mr. Brown. This is actually a Medi-Cal case that we tried to work. He was 82. He attended family training and set up an appointment. Back then we had live trainings, but he set up the appointment, but he canceled because he felt that he had everything lined up. All kinds of health issues, hearing, cancer, leg issues, falls, you know. And then 5 months later, after he canceled, he had 3 strokes in one day. Can you imagine? One of the strokes was on the operating table. So he was admitted to the hospital, surgery. He went to rehab and he plateaued. So there's that word, plateau.
So when we look at these words, he's over 65. He's not union. He's eligible for Social Security, admitted, good word. For the surgery and the rehab, who paid? Medicare paid. Remember, Medicare is our friend, short term, and then bad word.
So when he went into skilled, the skilled nursing in the Valley here is about $10,000 a month. So how are we going to pay for that? So can he apply for Medi-Cal? And will the application be approved? Well, you need the rest of the story. And the problem with Mr. Brown here, after the strokes, he had no legal mental capacity. He couldn't talk anymore. And so therefore, whatever legal documents he had on the table, which was a will-based estate plan, the family was going to probate. So he had an income about $2,500. He had $100,000 in the bank and a paid off house about $250,000. This is very typical, you know, usually a $350,000 home, but this is typical of the seniors that we're seeing.
All right, so now you're the adjudicator. So grab that piece of paper Helen just referenced, that white piece of paper.
And it's going to be on the
And
bottom.
we're going to look at the bottom where the Medi-Cal is. And I want you to make a decision. Mr. Brown, as a single man, is allowed to have one house. He's allowed to have a car. He's allowed to have $2,000 in cash. Will you approve or deny this application for Medi-Cal benefits? Well, he failed the $2,000 test, didn't he? He has more than $2,000. This is an automatic denial, and he's going to be told he's too rich and that he needs to spend down that extra $98,000. Okay? So because he exceeds the $2,000, he's not eligible for Medi-Cal. The good news is the deficit here is $7,500 a month. The difference between his income of $2,500 a month and the care cost being $10,000 a month, he just has to write a check, or his children write a check for $7,500 out of his bank account to pay his $10,000 a month fee. And at the end of 13 months, he has written checks from the account for $7,500. The good news is he is now below $2,000 and can apply for Medi-Cal. Well, he continues to live. Now that he is eligible for Medi-Cal and the house is in his name, the house now becomes subject to that third-party Medi-Cal recovery rule we talked about earlier. And if Mr. Brown continues to live at $7,500 a month deficit, the $250,000 value of his house is going to be recovered by Medi-Cal once he dies. The sad thing is, he should not have canceled his appointment. He should have paid attention to what would have prevented him from, one, spending down $98,000, which he didn't have to do, and two, he could have saved his house from a Medi-Cal recovery lien. And I will tell you, in the 18 years that I've done this type of work, not one time have I ever met with a family where mom and dad said, we want our estate to go to the state of California. Not once. The sad thing here is, if he lives 46 months, the inheritance for the children is probably zero. Now, one thing you got to understand about Helen and her team, the objective is to help mom and dad access as much money as possible from whatever program they're eligible for so that they don't run out of money before they die. Nothing else matters. It's not about the inheritance. It's all about mom and dad having a quality of life without running out of money. Does that make sense?
So we could have had a better plan for him if he would have came in before the strokes. We would have designed him a care plan. We have about 5 attorneys that we have trained and worked with. We would have got him in front of one of those attorneys to reposition the house and the assets. The day one that he walked into the hospital or was ambulanced into the hospital, he qualified for Medi-Cal that day. He would have avoided the spend down without paying to the skilled nursing. We protected the house from Medi-Cal recovery. He would have surrendered the $2,500. He gets the first $35, as you guys can see on the chart there, but the rest of it is his share of costs for Medi-Cal. Rather than $10,000 a month, he will surrender that. The inheritance potential is $350,000. That's $100,000 in the bank and the paid off house. Recovery would have been 0. So now we have Mrs. Jones, and this is going to be an aid and attendance case. However, we need to be cognitive of Medi-Cal. Everyone on the call today, you need to make sure your Medi-Cal eligibility is always protected. So she's 87. She came to one of my seminars when we were having live events. Her and the kids came to family training, and she has COPD, macular degeneration, the eyesight's going. She had several falls, congestive heart failure going on, and 8 medication. Now she's supposed to be using a walker, but she said that walker is only for old people, and she didn't consider herself old. So she hates cooking, so she's not eating properly. And because she's not driving, she's visiting the ER a little bit too many times. Kids are concerned, her doctor's concerned, but she didn't want to go into one of these big assisted livings. She wanted a place where that she could continue to trim roses, and because her yard was just full of roses. So she had a 25-year-old mobile home, and she said that thing was worth $75,000. The space rent was $850 and going up. Her income at the time is $1,800, and her medical insurance, besides the Medicare, was $350, so a little high for her. She had $45,000 in the savings, $15,000 in the checking, small IRA of $7,000 to pay for final expenses.
All right, so here's another wisdom opportunity. When we go out on the internet looking for wisdom, it's not there. If you're just looking for information, there's plenty of junk. So a couple of things you need to know about VA rules. There was a major rule change in October of 2018. Prior to 2018, she would have not been eligible for Medi-Cal because she would have been too rich.
Yep.
I got to tell you, when you look at that fact pattern, and you have to accept the fact that the widow of this wartime veteran is considered too rich for aid and attendance, it is really gut-wrenching. So under the new rules, after 2018, she's good to go. So now when you're out there looking at rules on the internet, there's plenty of junk. It gets confusing. Under the new rules, she's going to qualify. Now, something to understand about the widow of a wartime veteran, she never remarried after he died. So she retained the status as the widow of a wartime veteran. Had she remarried a non-veteran, she would no longer be the widow of a wartime veteran. Okay? So the opportunity for this benefit goes with marriage, not with divorce. Okay, not with remarriage to a non-party member. She had an old trust, hadn't been seen in years, needed to be dusted off. We recommend you have those things looked at every 3 to 5 years.
So can she apply for aid and attendance? And what happens if 6 months from now or a year from now, she needed Medi-Cal? So let's take a look at the one. So we got her a care plan with her and her kids. We found her a nice boarding care, an RCFE, that's no more than 6 beds. It was full of roses in the yard, so we hit that mark too. Our attorney repositioned the assets where the kids were in charge. We protected her Medi-Cal eligibility. That is so important because $1,244 for VA versus the expense for skilled nursing. You got to make sure that the eligibility is protected. We applied for the aid and attendance, and her new income went from $1,800 to $3,009. There was no spend down, no recovery for that, and her supplemental funds based upon her $75,000 in mobile home. She has $140,000 that she has supplemented.
So as we look at the scenario for her, I think we all understand that finding a place for her to live 24/7 for $3,000 a month is pretty much impossible. Okay. So for this family, let's assume that Helen and her team were able to find the right place for $4,000 a month. By repositioning the assets and putting the $140,000 as a supplemental funding strategy, it gave this family the ability to pay for another 140 months of her long-term care solution. Now, the reality is her care costs will go up, one, because cost of living goes up, but chances are her health care is going to decline as well, meaning she needs more services. But for right now, being able to get the VA benefit, preserve her Medi-Cal eligibility if she were to graduate into skilled care, having the $140,000 properly positioned to supplement her shortfall to be in a boarding care facility and protected from a Medi-Cal spend down, look back, or recovery rule. This is a home run from every level. The widow got the VA benefit. The goal is to pray to God she never goes to skilled and never has to use this money for anything but her long-term care. Does that make sense? And again, the potential inheritance in this case could be a good one, but it's better than her children having to write checks for the next 5-10 years for her care services.
So now we got a couple, and Mr. and Mrs. Smith. We started out with you were going to be doing VA first, but we need to make sure Medi-Cal's in place. He's a Korean vet, and she's got some health issues. Both attended family training, and they were not wanting to move for another 5 months into assisted living. They're used to, they live in Lincoln, that sun's out there in the, we call it the cruise on land out there. And they're used to entertainment and all that going on. So that's why they wanted to go into assisted living. Both had 2 activities of daily living: not taking their meds on time and not eating. Matter of fact, Mrs. Smith told him to go find his own food because she was done cooking. And he kept going to Sam's Club for that $1.50 hot dog and always getting in a crash of some sort. He had a big old car. And so that's where he was going for his meals. Both are fall risks, not using their walkers or anything like that. And then what happened, Ed?
Well, the Prince of Niger's, you guys know the story. So my own family, with my father-in-law, an educator with a master's degree, last summer, they had the opportunity to get the keys to a brand new Mercedes-Benz and a cashier's check for $2 million. And all they had to do was meet the guy at the Walmart parking lot with $4,000 in $50 bills. So we waved goodbye to the $4,000. There was no Mercedes and there was no check. It wasn't 2 months after that the housekeeper that cleans our house, cleans his house, calls to report there's about a 3-inch stack of papers on the dining room table with a lot of stickers on it for notaries, and that somebody was going to come out tomorrow to execute the documents. So I run over to look at it. Come to find out, he's refinancing his $700,000 house on the golf course to a higher interest rate, $139,000 loan refinance, and $39,000 of broker fees to process the $139,000 loan. The reason he was refinancing the house was because he got a phone call. So I gave them a phone call too, pretending to be him. I think I'm a little savvy to this. I got to tell you, in 5 minutes, I was ready to refinance my house. They are brilliant at scamming elders. So my advice here is do everything you can to preserve and protect your parents' wealth from the bad guys, because they're working harder at getting your parents' wealth than they are at protecting it. And sometimes we have to do things like put a cap on how much money they can use their ATM card for, or make certain the bank knows that if they see something unusual to let you know. There's a point where you have to have that discussion. When should the bills be taken care of? All of this started happening for my in-laws at the same time we started getting the notice from PG&E saying, by the way, we're turning the power off because the bill hasn't been paid and the tag on the car hadn't been paid. So a lot of these things just came together in a matter of months where we figured out we had to step up and be more proactively involved because they needed it, but they didn't want to ask for it. You know what I mean? So just be aware of this stuff. Anything you can do to help them protect themselves from the bad guys is a step in the right direction. And Lord knows there's a lot of, I was over there this weekend. Hi, this is Microsoft calling to renew your annual Microsoft license for $299. We need your debit card. Keep in mind, my father-in-law doesn't even know how to turn on a computer, let alone doesn't even have one. But somehow he's getting a renewal notice from Microsoft for $299 to redo the license for a computer that he doesn't even have. They're good at it. And yeah, we're all concerned at that point, but we took steps to help protect him.
Yep. So Mrs. Smith, we knew with her health issues, she could be in skilled nursing about 12 to 24 months. And so that's why I said this is a VA and Medi-Cal case. So we got him into one of the assisted livings. She had neither one had memory issues at the time that we were working with them. The Social Security and pension was right at $5,000. House was about $350,000. They had a debt on it about $100,000. They had $150,000 in cash in the bank. And Ed, what's that thing in the red there?
All right, let's get out the piece of paper again. Let's do the Medi-Cal strategy first. Okay, husband and wife. All right, so our care cost in assisted living, but we want to do the Medi-Cal app and then I'll show you the VA app. So for Medi-Cal, they're allowed to have one house. It's got a little bit of debt on it, and they're allowed to have how much to get Medi-Cal. So look that number up. How much cash can they have for Medi-Cal as a married couple? And remember, for a married couple for Medi-Cal, it's a big number, but Medi-Cal for a single person is only $2,000. So for the Medi-Cal number, it's about $129,000. So 128 and change. Now look at the VA number. Remember, it was almost the same, but let's do something simple here first. We know that with $150,000 for Medi-Cal, they will not get approved. If she goes into skilled nursing today and they need Medi-Cal benefits, they have too much money. Now, one simple thing that could be done before an application is turned in to get the denial. What if we paid $25,000 off of the debt? we took 25,000 cash, we pay down the debt from $100,000 to $75,000. All right, we still have a house. The only difference is we have $125,000 cash. So for a married couple, is she eligible for Medi-Cal benefits now? Yes. For VA, from the asset point of view, with $125,000, are they eligible for VA? Yes. So sometimes it's simple things like this that can get you across the finish line before you fill out an application and get a denial. Because once you fill out an application and get a denial, you can be months, if not years, trying to get an approval. Rule number one, always submit applications that will get approved the first time. Avoid the mistakes, okay? So sometimes it's something as simple as that. Now, their care cost is $6,500 a month to be in a boarding care assisted living environment. They've got $5,000 a month coming in, so their negative cash flow is only $1,500 a month. This is really not that bad. But he is a wartime veteran. So why are we going to jeopardize that? So let's go ahead and get his VA benefit going along to solve the negative cash flow. So now with the VA benefit, we've structured everything to apply both for VA or Medi-Cal. The assets have been properly set up. We meet the requirements for both as a married couple, and we preserve the Medi-Cal if she ever needs it. So this is win-win from every direction. So the positive thing here is, for the kids, do mom and dad have any negative cash flow at all? None. Are the kids happy? Yeah, they're usually ecstatic at this point.
So we were a little proactive here. We got, because they had legal mental capacity, we got them in front of one of our attorneys. The kids and the doctor understood what we were doing and approved what the plan was. Our attorney repositioned the assets. We protected Medi-Cal first, and we were able to apply for aid and attendance. So if we resolve Medi-Cal issues first, we can always manage to get the aid and attendance. So now their new income is $7,230. Care cost is $6,500. There was no spend down, no recovery, and their supplemental funds could be around $400,000. Do you think they're going to run out of money? There could be a potential inheritance, but we don't know. So what's your next step? Your next step, your last handout here is on the top there, we put in there those costly mistakes you're probably already making. But if you like a free consultation with me, a 15-minute consultation, you'll call my assistant. Her name is Paige, and that's her phone number. And you can also go back to my website and download that free ebook, How to Care for Your Aging Parents, 7 Resources for a Better Elder Care. So we also have another website. It is Sacramento COVID-19.com. And if you're dealing with the COVID-19, there's lots of resources out there. Even for you, Dan, you might want to go out there and take a look at some of those resources. And it's education and for somebody that's wanting to stay home. So with that, we're going to stop the recording and open it up for questions.